And we are recording. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, for taking time out of your work day, whether your lunch hour, to tune in to this webinar, whether you're watching with us here on Zoom or you're watching on Facebook Live. We appreciate you. My name is Caleb Talley. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Startup Junkie. For those of you who may not be familiar with Startup Junkie, we're a mission-driven organization based here in Northwest Arkansas. Our office, where I'm sitting right now, is on the Fayetteville Square. Startup Junkie exists to empower innovators and entrepreneurs, and we do that largely in two ways. One of those is through one-on-one consulting. Whether you have an idea that you dreamt up last night, or a business with $25 million in revenue, we're here to serve you as best we can, connect you to resources, provide you with advice. We have a team of consultants that are here to help anybody and everybody they can. The other facet of how we empower entrepreneurs is through events, just like this one here today. In normal times, we like to, we used to have in-person events, but these are largely webinar, Zoom-based now. Hopefully we'll get towards having in-person events again soon. But educational events, networking events, all sorts of things to help connect you to fellow entrepreneurs, educational resources, and things of that nature. So today's presentation on the hacker's perspective, a webinar on cybersecurity, will be led by Foster Davis. Foster is the founder of BreachBits. He's an adjunct professor at the US Naval Academy, as a certified chief information security officer, former National Security Agency Space Intelligence officer, and United States Navy ship warfare and cyber warfare veteran. Foster has specialized in balancing cybersecurity and mission operations for over 13 years. He's bringing that experience to us today in the form of a presentation, and we're all very excited to learn more about this topic. If during any time during this presentation you have a question you think you might forget, go ahead and drop that question in the chat box of Zoom. If you're watching on Facebook, you can drop it in the comments. I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll ask it at the end. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Foster.
Well, thanks, Caleb. I appreciate that. And good morning from the West Coast, where I am currently, and good afternoon to the East Coast. Really a pleasure to be back with the Startup Junkie team. Really appreciate the introduction there, Caleb. And, today we are going to discuss something that I'm extremely passionate about. It's a theme that I like to call the hacker's perspective. So I'm actually a cyber defensive guy, but I've just worked with a lot of hackers in my day and presently. And something that I like to share with people is this, it's this idea, something that I've learned, that the organizations that have the best defense have a good offense. And so my goal today is to talk about some of the things that I've learned from looking through cyber defense from that hacker's perspective. In order for me to really explain to you my point of view on it, I want to tell you a little bit about my background, because computer security is a large field with a lot of facets. Computers integrate with every discipline on earth nowadays. And so there are a lot of perspectives out there. What I'm going to give you today is my perspective from where I've been. And so in order to explain that best, let me tell you a little bit about where I've been. Let me expand on a few of the things you talked about, Caleb. The first is born, raised in Arkansas. After growing up in Arkansas, went to the US Naval Academy for undergrad and graduate school, studied information technology and space engineering, among the other disciplines that were taught there at the Academy. I was part of a group of people sent to grad school right after undergraduate work. So even before I went out into the fleet, as we say, I was sent to do some more information technology, space engineering, artificial intelligence studies at the Naval Postgraduate School, heavily influenced how I would see the next part of my career. As you mentioned, Caleb, I was a naval ship officer. During that time, I conducted operations ranging from disaster relief in the wake of the earthquake in Haiti back in 2010. I've also done counter-piracy operations off the coast of Somalia. If you've seen that movie Captain Phillips, I was not on that mission, but it's a similar type of work. Very practical work, very practical work. And that's going to be important as I'm explaining my perspective. But again, informed by a lot of technical education before that. After that part of my career, I decided to shift a little bit. I worked for the National Security Agency doing satellite intelligence. And then I also worked for the Navy doing red teaming, which is where you take hackers. We took the Navy's hackers and we went around the world where the Navy is, and we conducted red teaming. So we hacked ourselves in order to find where we could improve. And I did that. I pioneered some global efforts we did there. And then almost as a culmination of my experience, I was on a team of about a dozen people brought together at the Pentagon looking at cyber-enabled economic warfare. Some people might call this the counter-China mission. Essentially, what we were doing for the Secretary of the Navy was trying to figure out why over the last 20 to 30 years, cyber breaches keep occurring. And I touch on that one because that also heavily influenced my perspective in the global threat, we'll say, and the techniques that advanced adversaries are using. And then on my way out of active duty, I did work with some Wall Street doing risk management. I am really big into risk management. You're going to see that during this presentation. I really, really love the language of risk management because I believe it is a language, and I believe it brings together all types of disciplines. What I do today is, Caleb mentioned, I'm an EC Council certified Chief Information Security Officer. While most CISOs may work on the defensive side, I am working on the red teaming side right now. So I've co-founded BreachBits with the original founder, John Lundgren, and we do artificial intelligence and automation powered red teaming. And I'll explain a little bit of why I believe so much in red teaming. And then I also, in my reserve duties, as an adjunct professor of cybersecurity at the Naval Academy. So all this to say that what I'm bringing together here are the disciplines, a wide variance of disciplines. And what I really like to focus on is blending the different disciplines. And I love seeing the connections between all different types of disciplines, from the most technical to the ones that require a hammer to get done. So I did want to take a moment just to explain from where I'm coming, because again, this is a wide field of expertise. So what I am going to talk about today, I'm going to focus on really two things. I'm going to focus on two topics. In the people in the audience today, as I understand it, we've got a mix of people that are starting up a business. And then, as I call it, if you're not starting up a business, you're just in a keep up. You're trying to keep up. You're trying to keep up with changing technology. So I want to speak to these two populations in today's session. And number one, I'm going to help you understand your enemy. I'm going to help you understand from where I see the hacker's perspective. We're going to talk about the advantages that they have, and then I'm going to show you where I see perhaps some chinks in their armor that as a defender we can take advantage of. The second thing I'm going to talk about, again, I'm very passionate about risk management and sharing with you what I've seen from best in class. And I like to sort of tell you the punchline up front. What we're going to find in section 2 today is that culture trumps everything. Technology and process are very important, but culture trumps everything, according to what I've seen from best-in-class secure organizations. So let's get into the first section here. The first part, I'm going to talk about the hacker's perspective as I see it. So Professor Davis is going to be here for one slide today, okay? We have a wide audience here today. Some of you don't know much, have not studied, have not worked with security at all, but I also know there are people here today that are even more expert at cybersecurity than I am. So let me just level everybody and let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. I want to start with the most basic understanding, which is, okay, what is a cyber attack? Now, sometimes in the news, you heard this called different things. Maybe it's a breach, a hack, ransom, theft, hijacking. There's more terms, okay? But I'm going to sort of bundle them all into one concept that is an attack. So what is an attack? So an attack is any time there's a malicious attempt to violate something that you are expecting your computer system to be doing for you, okay? And in security, there's three things that we talk about. The first is confidentiality. You expect your computer to respect confidentiality. And my casual definition of confidentiality is that information can only be seen by those that are supposed to see it. You expect your computer to do that for you. Here's an example of what a breach or an attack might look like. Let's say an attacker is able to trick your login page, and they are able to log in and make the system think that they are you. And now they're able to view proprietary information that they weren't supposed to see, but somehow your computer system has failed to enforce this expectation of confidentiality. So that's the first thing in an attack might go after, confidentiality. The second, integrity. You expect that when you leave your data, when you leave a Word document on your computer, that when you come back to that computer, that it has not changed without your permission. So that's my casual definition of integrity, is information doesn't change without permission. You expect your computer to enforce that. So here's an example of what a breach might be. Let's say an attacker, without you knowing it, somehow gets into your payroll system and changes the direct deposit accounts so that when payroll comes around, all the money goes to the attacker's account, not to your employees. They didn't see information necessarily they weren't supposed to see, perhaps. They didn't violate any of these other concepts we're going to talk about here. But what they did do is they changed the data. That's all they had to do. So that would be considered an attack or a breach. The last third concept is availability, and perhaps the most important one. I certainly believe that this is the most important of the three. Availability. You expect that when you walk up to your computer that it works, that it allows you to access your files, that it allows you to connect to the internet. That's an expectation. It's the prime expectation of a computer, and we're actually going to see how availability ends up having a major security implication here. My casual definition is when the information system, it has to be accessed as it's designed to be accessed. And a breach of this might be if an attacker somehow disrupts your point of sale system. So you can't even check out a customer. You can't even take their payment. You cannot provide them a receipt. The attacker is going to make it so that you can't access that until you pay a ransom, perhaps. So these three items here, malicious hackers are constantly attempting to attack each of these aspects. So what you have to think about as we start. So again, this is the one slide where I'm really just want to make sure we're all level on this. And then I'm going to expand from this and kind of get into some of my experience. But what you have to think about is if one of these things or multiple of these things were to occur in your business, how would it impact your business? And it's a question that really only you can answer. So let's look at the hacker's perspective. So here's where I get into, here's what I've seen. And I start out by saying, we need to acknowledge the advantages that the hacker has. This is going to be very important in understanding how to defend against them. The first, and arguably, I'll say the second most important, time. Hackers have time. They don't have deadlines in the way that you and I have deadlines. We have quarterly reports. We have to, like I said earlier, we have to run payroll. We have deadlines. Now, they may have deadlines, but they're just not the same. They can take a week to try to hack you. They can take a month. They can take a year. And some of the most famous, infamous attacks are ones that were conducted over more than 250 days. Long time. And they can take their time. They can take their time. And we're going to see this is a very powerful advantage they have. They don't have to go fast. They don't have to be loud. It allows them to be, what I say, low and slow. And that's the most difficult type of hacker to catch, low and slow. The second advantage they have, low cost. For the price of $250 and a little bit of open source software, hacking does not cost a lot of money to conduct the attacks. The second, the reason why this is important, you can see here the asymmetry of this warfare. Asymmetry, it's not equal on both sides. Here you are, whether you're a startup or you're a keep up, you are probably spending a lot of money that you cringe every time that you spend because you wish it was going into maybe something that was a value center instead of what you might be perceiving as a cost center. They don't have this challenge. They don't have this challenge, and it's very important we have to keep it in mind. Now I know I put it third, but I actually think that this is perhaps the most important advantage they have. Hacking, by its very nature, is easy. And I don't mean just because you can go to not even the dark web, but you can go download tools that can help you hack for free. And let alone, let's talk about some of the things that happened with the recent SolarWinds hack, where other defensive tools were released into the wild. There is an entire ecosystem of software that the bad guys, you have these very adept, very advanced, malicious hackers that develop software and ultimately just release it to everybody else so that they can just push a button. But that's actually not even the easiest part about it. Remember in the last slide, I talked about availability. The prime directive of a computer is to be available. A computer is a tool. It is literally designed from the ground up to be available. And that means that if you have physical access to a computer or a cell phone or a computer system, almost the overwhelming majority of systems are designed to allow you to hack into the system if you have physical access. If you can touch the computer, you can hack the computer. And that is that's a desired behavior. We want that. We want that because at the end of the day, it's your computer. You need to be able to get into it. So I have one quick C story on this because I think it's worth emphasizing. So as a young junior officer, I was out on a mission on our ship. I was not in charge of the computer teams that we had on the ship, but everybody knew I sort of had a background in it. So one day we're out on a mission. We were going on this mission for the next week. We had just come through a period where we had repaired and upgraded all of our systems. All the systems were working great until one system stopped working. It stopped working. What was the deal? We didn't know. The system administrators came to me. They said, "Hey, Davis, we heard you've got some experience." I said, "Okay, guys, explain to me what's going on." They said, "Well, don't tell the captain, but we can't log into this important system." "Well, why can't you log in?" "We forgot the password." "Okay, all right. Well, that happens." I said, "But look, I know that you guys have written the password down somewhere. Okay, I know we have security, and you guys have seen this. Let's just go find the notebook. Let's go find." "Sir, we've lost the notebook." We've lost the notebook. He threw it in the shredder the other day. Yeah, I mean, you can't make this up. It's almost like the dog ate his homework, okay? So I said, okay, well, do we have an internet connection? We did. And back then you really had to ask that question. But we did have an internet connection. I said, can I get into the cage where we normally keep it? Or did you lose the key as well? No, we were able to get into the cage. Okay. So I said, give me an hour and the internet connection. So I looked up a couple things, looked at the type of computer, and honestly, within about a half hour, and I'm not really an advanced hacker. I just work with advanced hackers, but I did know a couple tricks. And I was able to easily get in, recover the password. We actually basically decrypted the password, gave it back to the sysadmin, tossed him the keys, and then we went on and completed the mission. All right, I take time there because this is we have to understand that every computer by design is meant to be hacked into, and we have to keep that in mind as we're defending. So then the final advantage is that there are a lot of them, and that's pretty self-explanatory, but it's also, we have to look at the other side, is why are they doing this? Sun Tzu says you have to understand your enemy. I'm going to describe 3 personas of the hackers that are probably most relevant to this audience today. The first is ordinary thieves. Okay, ordinary thieves, they want to steal data in order to perhaps sell it or to perhaps ransom you so that they can get money. So it's just an ordinary theft. Okay, ransom has been the same for thousands of years. The tools have just changed. So ransom is a top threat, and I've highlighted that here on the screen because it is a top threat for the people in this session today. The next is foreign actors. Now they aren't necessarily driven by a dollar amount. They sometimes are driven by perhaps national objectives or political or diplomatic or military reasons. But one thing that you should be aware of is that there is a lot of IP theft ongoing. They are trying to steal what you know how to do. Now, let's even say that you're in the forestry business. If you're in the forestry business, you know, if you haven't traveled the world, then you may not understand that actually the technology even we have in forestry is extremely valuable worldwide. And there are a lot of countries that want to have the forestry industry that we have, but they just don't know how. And so one easy way is just to go take it. Now, I highlight these 2 threats here. You will know if you get ransomed. You will know. You will know if you get ransomed because you're going to walk up to your computer and it's going to say, we've locked your computer and we will destroy it unless you call us by this date and give us your credit card. You're going to know about ransom. You may never know about IP theft. You may be okay with that, but I want to make sure that you understand that that threat is there. And of course, activism. Some people want to cause reputational damage or defacement. Okay, so I hope that by the end of this slide, what I've explained is that we are in a fight that is extremely unfair. As we say in the military, it's asymmetrical, but we're on the short end of the stick here of this unfair fight, okay? So that's a little bit of the hacker's perspective. What I want to talk about now for a few minutes is some things that I've seen from best in class, from whether it's when I was going around hacking the Navy for good, whether it was me being a system user for years out in the operational environment, or whether it was the work I did from the Pentagon on this, or whether it's the work I do today where I see many, many different companies of all sizes and maturity levels, okay? Culture trumps everything. So what am I saying about this? Well, there's 3 things that have to come together: technology, process, and culture. These 3 things must come together in order to have a secure organization. Why did you have a stool on the last slide? It's a 3-legged stool. If you have 2 but not 1, that stool is nothing but a piece of firewood. It's not useful. You must have 3. Now, technology, we are as a cyber defender, we're actually in very good, we're in a great time. There is a lot of technology, especially over the last 10 years. Defensive technology has made huge advancements. The prices have come way down. It's very functional and helps you really find a balance. So I like to put a green check mark next to technology because technology is very easy to achieve, in my opinion. The next is process. Very important. Okay, you have the technology, but how do you assemble it? How do you put it together? How do you layer your defenses? Specifically, how do you make decisions related to security? How do you detect when something's gone wrong? How do you respond when something's gone wrong? And then how do you recover from it? I put a green check mark because I'll highlight a few today of the processes that are very well established by extremely smart people. The industry standards on this are have made huge advancements the last 10 to 20 years. So I put a green check mark. That's easy to come by. In many cases, if you want, you literally just need to go read a checklist. Of course, Culture is the one. Everybody underestimates the importance of culture, but it is the hardest of these three to achieve. What I've seen is that the most secure organizations in the world, from Wall Street to the National Security Agency, so best in the federal space, best in private space, they all had culture, a culture of where risk management was a lifestyle, where incentives were right and teamwork was promoted, and where criticism was valued. And I'm going to talk more about this, but this is what the best in class knew. And most importantly here, yes, it's a three-legged stool, but culture is the one that if you get it wrong, it will ruin the other two. But if you get it right, it can actually enhance and drive you towards the other two even faster. But it is the hardest one to achieve because culture is slow, changing, and it's very much an art. There's no exact checklist to follow. I want to talk a little bit more about culture, but I've suggested to you that the way to become secure is to have the right culture. But don't take my word for it. Let me show you on the screen here is the paradigm of organizational maturity established by the National Institute of Standards and Technology that has done amazing work over the last decade, 2 decades. This is from their cybersecurity framework. It's the NIST cybersecurity framework. And there will be links to all of these things in the slides that Caleb said he'd distribute. But let me orient you. Let me show you how they look at it. They look at it as security really is about maturity of the organization. And on the bottom, we see tier 1, the least mature organization. In other words, perhaps the least secure organization. And on the top, they have tier 4. And where you want to be is tier 4 or tier 3. Between 3 and 4 could be a business decision, but certainly if you're at tier 1, you would be, by their standards, you would be the least secure type of organization. Let's look at the 3 columns here. The 3 columns we have are the process of risk management, which ranges from, well, we do risk management on the back of a napkin or just verbally. We react to certain things when they come up, or in the most mature case, we're proactive about our risk management. We find things before they become a real issue. Next, in the next column, how is the program itself of risk management? Is there an established way to do risk management? Do we have hard lines between departments, or do we integrate it together in a team effort? And then the last one is external participation, which I think, which a lot of organizations overlook. External participation means that it acknowledges the fact that you are not alone. You are not the only defender out there. You are, in fact, in a school of fish of defenders. And if you've ever seen a school of fish, they work together and is their best defense, it turns out. So external participation, the least mature organization is not going to be listening to their industry colleagues. They are not going to be consuming threat information. And the most mature organization is not only going to be consuming that information, not only going to be contributing and make sure they integrate their supply chain into that, but they're going to be actively creating ways to think about it, to come up with new ways. So this, according to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, this is the way to become a secure organization. But let me highlight again, as the maturity goes up, look at what they are telling us are the 3 elements that give you a mature organization: risk management and participation. In other words, it's not about tech. It's about culture. Culture, do you have a culture that is good at risk management? Do you have a culture where it's okay to participate and admit that you got hacked last week and you want to share that with others? Here we have the premier Institute of Technology saying it's not about technology. That's really powerful. That's really powerful. Not only have I seen this in theory, I've seen it in practice. The second element of this, and this is where I'm going to give a couple tips on some specifics about the cultures that I've seen. This is me telling you right now, I'm grabbing you by the shoulders and I'm shaking you. I'm saying, look, cybersecurity is not mysterious. It's so easy to make a mistake, that cybersecurity is so mysterious that you'll never understand it, that there's no way you know, all your technicians and all of your consultants, they have all the power here. There's no way you can understand it. I will say it is mysterious, but it's as mysterious as taxes. It's as mysterious as the payroll process. It's as mysterious as the widgets you have on the assembly line and the specific tools you're using. To me, those are mysterious, but only to a degree. We deal with mystery all the time in that sense of the word. I am just saying that it's your run-of-the-mill mysterious. It's not special mysterious. That means that when I, as a business decision maker, when I walk up to any of these facets of my business, I don't know all the details, but I know the questions to ask. And I know the things that are going to matter. And I know how to bring the team together to solve challenges. Cyber's the exact same way. That's what I mean when I say it's not mysterious. You are used to dealing with this. Let's make sure in your culture that we don't treat it differently. The final thing I'll point out about culture: risk. There's all different types of risk, but if you boil it down, risk is all the same. Risk is risk is risk. And guess what? Cyber risk is also risk. And when NIST talks about having an integrated risk management program, looking at the right side of the visual here, all risk can be boiled down to this most fundamental risk equation. You use this risk equation whether you are driving in the car or whether you are at a board meeting with a very deliberate process. It can all be boiled down to the same equation. Risk is a product of how likely is this bad thing to happen? And then should the bad thing happen, how impactful would it be to my business, to my family, to my assets? So you do this all the time. Your team tries to identify bad things that could happen, and you try to figure out, are they going to occur? And how bad would it be? And at that point, you decide what to do about it. You can mitigate it. You can transfer the risk. This is the typical risk management process, but I love it so much because it brings a language for us to make sure we can have that conversation with cyber just like we do with everything else. And those that really are good at doing risk, it's not just a process. It's not just a piece of, it's not just a policy document we break out every time a bad thing happens. Risk management, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. And in fact, when it's your lifestyle, that means it's your culture. So does your organization have a culture where risk management is a part of that lifestyle, is a part of that culture? And from what I've seen, the best in class are this way. Risk management is a culture and it's a lifestyle. So, okay, there's a lot of theory. Let's break it down to a couple things, like if you've ever seen Jeff Foxworthy, okay? Here's your sign. Let me talk about a couple things. There's good traits that I've seen, and then I'm not gonna call them bad traits, but I'll say that traits that could be getting in the way. You've gotta think about this, okay? So here's the first one that might be getting in the way. Have you ever seen this in your organization? Hey, we're only gonna get hacked if somebody doesn't do their job, if the security guys don't keep up. It's this idea that you can be perfect in this environment. Now think back to the first section. If your organization believes that you will not be hacked, you might not be thinking about this correctly. It is a very unfair fight. It's not productive in your culture, in my opinion, to have a mentality that it's somebody's fault when we get hacked, okay? And here's another part. Hey, well, yeah, we got to have security, but look, that's not my problem. Tell the CISO, tell the security guys. That's not me. If your business leaders in procuring a new system and they're looking at cost and they want to trade away, well, I'll get a higher cost for more features. Oh, but I'll lower the cost for less security. Do your business and procurement people, do they understand the trades that they're making? Security is everybody's problem. Now, we can't have no responsibility. We have to balance the responsibility. We have to balance the responsibility there. Equally, there are lots of security flaws that you will just have to live with because computer systems are complicated, they're interdependent, and they're always changing. I've seen people get in trouble when I hear this. We have to fix everything immediately at all costs. That's not productive because it doesn't acknowledge what's going on in the business. It is a tough and it's an unfair fight, but we have to enable the mission of the organization. And security is a part of that. Here on the counter side, here are some great things that I would see. And I would add these to your checklist. Do people in your organization feel comfortable asking questions? It could be questions about something that's not security related, but do they feel, is there a culture where asking questions is okay and asking tough questions? Are people versed in how to ask those questions in a way that's respectful? And are people versed in how to respond to those questions that are respectful of what the asker is trying to get at, and understanding that the asker of the question is attempting to make us all better? It's important that we tolerate mistakes because again, you are in an unfair fight. You're going to take some punches. You're going to get hacked. So we have to tolerate the mistakes, but also that has to be balanced with an attitude that we're going to rapidly correct that mistake. Okay. Mistakes are okay because we're in an unfair fight, but it's not okay to not then rapidly figure out what to do about it. When a security proposal is made, we have to understand that what I've seen in secure cultures is that a security proposal is made, but everybody has to expect the person making that security proposal that maybe they want to invest $50,000 in a new security tool. Okay, I expect you, if you're going to say that to me, tell me what kind of business risk I'm at, whether I invest or not. Tell me what return on investment I'm going to make. Okay. Again, this acknowledges the balance between the business needs and the security needs. This slide was me getting into some of the specific things. I would add the things on the left to your checklist, and the things on the right, keep your ear out for those because that could indicate that some things are getting in the way. All right. To wrap it up here, I wanted to make sure that I gave a couple of point blank, forget all the theory, Foster, just tell us some best practices. What should I be doing right now? And I've geared this section towards the two types we've got in the room today. The startups, so whether you've just started up the business, and the keep ups, whether you're trying to keep up with the changing technology of today. Now, in this section, I like to have a little bit of fun with it, okay? We've got startups, or we've got people who are basically writing on sticky notes. If your security plan is on a sticky note, I understand that. And so I'm going to sort of talk to you, and I'm going to make sure you've got some things for your sticky notes, okay? So in the first, I want to draw your attention. I'm not going to emphasize this too much. I'll have a link to it at the end. But the NIST cybersecurity framework does a great job of pointing out there are 5 elements of defense and security. The first 3, you got to be able to identify that there's a threat out there, protect and prevent against specific threats, and detect if you've got an intrusion. Okay, now those can be pretty difficult in some ways, but really, I really like this framework because it points out that it's not just about how you can prevent it, it's what you do when you get hit. So here's my first sticky note, okay? Think to yourself, if you did get breached, how much would it really affect your business? That can be a difficult question to ask or answer, but you need to think about it. Because the answer is not going to be the same for everybody. For some businesses, it won't affect you at all. Although I think that you should think hard about that if that is your answer. And for others, you know clearly that there's a risk. The fourth part of the framework is respond. And this is a key point. You have to be able to respond. You will be hacked. You may not know it, but you will be hacked. How are you going to respond to that? How are you going to protect your business assets? And then how are you going to recover? How are you going to recover? And a key thing here, write this down, is for those on the sticky note plan, is backup solutions today are cheap. They're easy to use. Make sure you have one. Make sure it's automatic, and make sure it's easy to restore. It's easy to restore. I've been hacked before. I had actually a security forum website that was hacked. I made a deliberate decision not to invest in very expensive security tools, but I did invest in a very good backup solution. based on my business needs, that's all I needed. So once I got hacked, I shrugged it off. I pushed a button. The entire site was restored because I just went from the backup from the day before. I don't know how long they spent attacking it, but I spent this long protecting it. So that's how powerful the backups are. That's why I add that to the sticky note. Bringing back in the hacker's perspective, here's the method that hackers are always using. They find you, they find your flaws, and then they attack the flaws. Let's remember those 4 advantages that they have. Here's my sticky note. It can be very expensive and difficult to try to prevent them from finding you. So I like to just say, okay, let's assume that they found you. We're not gonna, if you're on the sticky note plan, maybe don't even dedicate resources to that. But here are some things I would do in order to help you find flaws. If you do nothing else, make sure your software is up to date. Remove any software that you're not actually using or that you can live without. If you want to get advanced about it, get help from create an internal red teaming team or hire pen testers to come help you find those flaws. To thwart them when they're trying to attack you, do these 2 things. Make sure multi-factor authentication or your 2-factor authentication. This is where if you sign up for a new website, they ask you for your cell phone number so they can text you every time you're logging in. I know it's a pain. They've actually made it very, very easy nowadays. But if your system allows for it, just turn it on, deal with the pain. Because from the hacker's perspective, it makes hacking into that system, I'm not kidding, 1,000 times more difficult if you have multi-factor enabled. So again, on your sticky note plan, just turn it on. Also make sure the firewall or Windows Defender is enabled. Sometimes it doesn't come out of the box as enabled, so you need to check each one. But if that firewall is on and you've got multi-factor authentication, you have just made my job as the hacker extremely hard and near impossible. If you want to be advanced about it, there are a lot of continuous monitoring solutions where you can constantly have a service looking for times when an attacker has broken in, if you want to be advanced about it. And so to say these again for your list. For startups, some things that you should think about is oh no, I have a problem. I've got a problem because startups, I forget, you guys don't read this nice printed text. Okay, here we go. Let's put it on the sticky notes for you startups, okay? Or for keep ups that are really just trying to make a big comeback here. Number 1, I said it already, but assume that you've already been breached. The hacker's already in your system. They will strike whenever they want. Your job now is really just to be prepared to slow them down and be ready to react. Okay, again, this is the sticky note plan. Just assume you've already been breached. Let's focus on what happens next. So here's your minimum prevention plan. I've already mentioned keep your software updated, multi-factor authentication, turn on your firewall. Your minimum recovery plan. I'm saying this again because this is what I'm trying to emphasize. Back up your data. Have redundant systems. If you rely on a point of sale system that a hacker could take down and now you can't take money, produce receipts, and track your inventory, that's probably a problem. What's your backup system? Do you have the old carbon copy credit card machine? I don't even know if they accept those anymore, but you've got to think through what are your redundant systems so that when you're hacked, because remember the hacker's already there, how are you going to continue your business as you handle the situation? And again, if a hacker could destroy your business, maybe you need to get off the sticky notes. Even for some startups, if you are at the complete mercy of a hacker that's already in your systems, you need to get better fast, okay? So for the keep ups, look at the NIST cybersecurity framework. These are, when you're ready, if you're a startup and you're ready to make that transition, or you have a lot to lose, pull up that NIST cybersecurity framework, step through it. Take the time to understand it and work through it. It's an extremely good framework. Figure out how to share information. There's lots of information sharing avenues. Find the ones in your industry, find the people you feel comfortable telling. Because when you get a breach, one of your second and third steps after you recover should be, how am I going to tell the other fish so that they also don't get hacked? We have to share information. That's our great advantage on the defensive side. Make sure your security team has a seat at the table. Your CISO should not be in a closet, in the old broom closet that's been converted into the server room. Cyber risk is business risk. So make sure they have a seat at the table. Best in class organizations do red teaming. Red teaming is not new. Wasn't invented by the security world. Red teaming is just scrimmaging. It's you have your good guys that role play as the bad guys, okay? It's important because it helps you find the things you didn't think of. It helps you, it supports a culture of scrutiny, of security. If you want to build your own red team, it's easy to do that. Take some people from your team and allow them to become immersed in the adversary perspective. I highly suggest that these are not the people that are running your defense, but they are allowed to sort of be a little bit independent and make your own red team or find another red team to come look at you from the outside. At this point, I want to open it up to Q&A. I think we've got a few minutes. Caleb, I'm happy to answer any questions. Caleb.
Absolutely. Well, first off, we appreciate that webinar. That was fantastic. Going to open the floor now. If you have a question for Foster, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. If you don't want to, say your question out loud, you're welcome to drop it in the chat box, and then we'll read your question. Or if you're watching on Facebook Live right now, feel free to comment your question, and I'm keeping an eye on that as well. So, floor is open. And not everybody all at once. We have a question in the chat. It says, how can you learn how to ethical hack or learn the way, I guess?
There are a couple of options. Ethical hacking is there are actually, the EC Council actually has a certification called Certified Ethical Hacker. The idea of an ethical hacker is that you've got somebody who has the skills to hack, but they have pledged and agreed and understand industry standards of ethics so that they are they understand how to conduct hacking in a way that is ethical but supports the defenders. It's as easy as going to the EC Council website. You can there are multiple different ways to do this, and there are slightly different programs, but one that I know of off the top is the Certified Ethical Hacker. It's probably not as technical as you think it is, but there are plenty of courses that can give you a crash course to take you from having no security experience to introducing you to the tools that hackers use, the methods that they use, and then to bring into you the industry standards, the ethics, the sort of the code of ethics and things like that. So EC Council, CEH, Certified Ethical Hacker, that's one of several.
And I don't know if it impacts that, but he also said he's in the UK, so I don't know if there's different organizations for that. And I can connect.
My understanding is that the EC Council certifications are international, and so I don't think that's a problem.
Awesome. Dan asks, how do you find reliable, trustworthy red hatters?
How do you find good guy hackers to be a part of your red team to help you find the problems? There's two phrases that are used in the industry. At the pinnacle of it is somebody who calls himself a red teamer or an ethical hacker. This is somebody who's practiced not only in penetration testing, which is the other phrase you should know about, penetration testing and vulnerability scanning. Those penetration testing and vulnerability scanning are very important. The difference between those and red teaming is that a red teamer thinks more like the adversary, is usually more goal-oriented, is going to try every trick in the book to get in once, whereas a penetration testing and vulnerability scanner, think of that as a mile wide but an inch deep. They're just looking on the surface to see, have you left any doors open? Whereas the hacker's going to try to go behind the door or underneath the door. So those are the three things you are going to look for: vulnerability scanning, penetration testing. In order to find a good red teaming firm, if you search for red teaming, you'll probably find several firms. A lot of penetration testing firms also do red teaming, but because penetration testing is a little bit more of an adopted term in the industry, and so you can look for penetration testing firms. What I'd go with is a lot of them are very reputable, and the industry is very good at sort of watching everybody. So it all does come down to trust. So find a place that you trust, that you like the team you're working with. Also ask people in your industry. You probably would be surprised that there are more people around you that are using these penetration testing teams, or if they're really at the pinnacle, the red teaming firms. And so ask around. You're on mute there, Caleb.
Sorry, I have a question about blue teaming. What about training for blue teams? Jan asks.
Absolutely. So there is definitely training for blue team. In a way, blue teaming is even more mature. There's certainly a debate on that, so I'll say something controversial. But I think that blue teaming, there's a lot of good resources. I am actually, though, not the perfect person to answer this. But so blue teaming, though, a lot of times I would say doesn't go under the name blue teaming. It's just blue teaming is what we say the defensive guys are doing. So the guys that, okay, yes, they've configured your systems, but now you've got a team who's actively going around looking for, hey, where are the holes? So they're going around doing within your organization, they're going to be conducting the penetration testing, the vulnerability scanning. This is what the blue team does. So sometimes it doesn't come in that phrase, but that's blue team activity. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for that.
And I have another question. Would it be better to have a CISSP certification as a method of preventative security?
Better than what, I suppose, is the question. Maybe I'll just sort of tangent that and answer it in this way, is that just like you build every team and you make sure that the people on your team have the right skill set, CISSP is a very, very good indication that somebody has the industry recognized training standards. CISSP, there are many out there. There really are a lot of really good ones out there. I think just to more generally address it, you've got to make sure that, because you know that cyber risk is your business risk, make sure people on your team are equipped to understand some things and act on them. And I'd say the most important thing is, if you're to the level where you can recognize that there's a problem, even if you don't necessarily know how to solve the problem, recognizing that there's a problem. I think CISSP is a good one.
And someone asked if they can share the presentation. Yes, I'll send the link. We're recording this. I'll upload it to our YouTube, and I will share this out to everybody that registered, along with the slides from Foster, and I'll copy him if that's all right with him to that email as well for anybody who wants to follow up. Someone also asked, in engagement with regulators on cyber, and in particular culture, finance services professional here, any insight into ways organizations can best demonstrate embedded risk management practices?
So I guess it depends on who are you demonstrating it to. Are you trying to demonstrate it to an auditor because you're going through perhaps a compliance audit or certification? On that front, usually the way that you'll prove it, that's sort of built into the standard. Maybe you have to show certain policy documents. Maybe you have to demonstrate a competency in practice over time. Compliance is absolutely important. Because compliance helps us learn from people who have had mistakes in the past. But if you're also not thinking about what I think you may really be asking about, is how do you maybe demonstrate that within the team? How do you achieve that culture of risk management? How do you integrate cyber risk in there? Now, I know that the regulations and the compliance standards are lacking a little bit. I think we're going to see that change over the next year or two. So it is kind of a tough thing to answer. So what I would say is, if you look at NIST special publication 800-171, which there's going to be a link from, I have a link up here on the screen to NIST.gov, but there's a standard called 800-171 and 800.53. A lot of compliance standards that are forward-thinking already incorporate those security control measures. Some that are lacking behind, and I believe that the financial industry is one of them. That is where in my prediction, they will end up adopting what these other standards have adopted. NIST special publication 800-171 or 800-53 is where I would look. If you're complying with that on your own checklist, you're probably doing a pretty good job. I'm happy to follow up with if I didn't specifically answer that, maybe offline.
Do we have any more questions? I don't want to cut anybody off. But again, Foster, thank you so much for this presentation. This was fantastic, very informative. We appreciate your time and appreciate you for making yourself available and providing these resources to everybody moving forward.
My pleasure. Thanks, Caleb. You guys can see I get so passionate about it. Happy to continue the conversation with anybody would like, and look forward to seeing your team again, Caleb. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And also, Foster was on a recording of the Startup Junkies podcast last week. So that will be coming out in a couple of weeks. So be looking for that on the Startup Junkies podcast for those who might be interested in that. All right, everybody have a great day. And we hope to see you at the next event.